Hi, I'm Shane Collins, and welcome to Review, your source for film equipment reviews. Today, I have the EF mount version of the Blackmagic Cinema Camera by Blackmagic Design. Blackmagic released this camera a few months ago after about 8 months of problems, upsets, and pushing back the release date. We had pre-ordered this camera all the way back in September of 2012, and we didn't receive it until April of this year. The camera itself, though, was really worth waiting for. The Blackmagic Cinema Camera retails for about $3,000, less expensive than the 5D Mark III, takes the same Canon EF lenses and has a 2.4 times crop sensor that can deliver up to 2.5K RAW video with 13 stops of dynamic range. The camera itself records to 2.5-inch solid-state drives, and for connections has a remote in, headphone out, dual 1/4-inch audio inputs, SDI out, Thunderbolt, and a power connector on the side. On the rear of the camera, you have a large 5-inch touchscreen, which serves as a monitor while recording, and you've also got your basic function buttons on the back. Finally, it also comes with a copy of DaVinci Resolve, which is $1,000 on its own, bundled for free. Now, we've been using this camera for a few months, and the image quality is astounding. We've been big fans of the Canon 5D and 7D DSLRs, but this camera really blows them out of the water. While you can shoot in Prores or Dnxhd, the amount of control you get in RAW is amazing. Here's a clip of something shot in RAW, straight out of the camera. You'll see that it's very flat, with no real color definition. However, when we bring it into post and do some grading, it can turn into this. Those 13 stops of dynamic range are really amazing. I'm also a big fan of having zebras to show when I'm peaking, something that I wish DSLRs have had for a while. The same thing with focus peaking. When I'm shooting at something like f1.4 or a really shallow f-stop like that, it's a lot easier to maintain an accurate focus with focus peaking on. I also really like that it records to computer solid-state drives. They're abundant and relatively cheap per gigabyte. You can grab a good 256 gigabyte drive for about $170. However, with the good also comes the bad. To start, it's somewhat of an awkward form factor. Now, as a cinema camera, you're probably always going to have it in a full rig, something like this, that you can either mount on a tripod or, use as some sort of shoulder mount. But if you want something run and gun, you're better off with the ergonomics of a DSLR. The touchscreen is nice, but it's terrible in outdoor conditions. I highly recommend an external monitor for this camera to take care of the glare, but with SDI monitors on the higher end of the price scale, expect to spend at least $600 for a quality monitor. For inputs, I'd love to get rid of the 1/4-inch jacks and see XLR inputs, because really any professional mic is going to take XLRs instead. The camera has a hell of a sensor resolution inside, but with a 2.4 times crop factor, it's hard to get wide shots. Putting a standard 35mm EF lens on the camera results in an 84mm equivalent focal length. Our standard workhorse lens for this camera is the Sigma EX 10-20mm f3.5, which is equivalent to a 24mm at its widest. Luckily, with this amount of crop, there's almost no visible distortion at 10mm. In camera, there's a couple of setbacks. First off, the battery isn't removable, and in realistic shooting settings, you need to plug it in within 90 minutes or have an external battery solution. In studio, it's not a problem, but on location, it's a real hassle when you've only got 90 minutes to shoot and then plug in. Through the menu, you can't manually white balance, and you have to choose a preset Kelvin value instead. There's also no crop marks if you want to shoot at an aspect ratio besides 16:9. And when your solid-state drive fills up, the camera just stops recording. No warning, no percentage of how much you have left on the card, it just stops. Finally, we have the post-production workflow. When shooting in ProRes or Dnxhd, it's fine. But if you're not used to a longer workflow, you're in for a surprise when shooting in RAW. RAW files come out of the camera as basically a picture of every frame that you then have to import into the bundled DaVinci Resolve software. You then export a proxy file to do your editing program, then you do your cuts, then you bring that proxy file back into the DaVinci Resolve to render your final project. Not only does it take a while, but it takes a very powerful computer to handle RAW. All in all, do I like the camera? Yes, that's why I own one. It's a big step above shooting with a DSLR. Is it perfect? No, and for $3,000 I don't expect it to be. Lenses not included, a full working setup for this camera comes to about $5,000. If I was to step up to a Red Scarlet, I'd be looking somewhere in the range of $20,000 to $25,000. If you're looking to start taking filmmaking seriously and looking for a good camera to get, or even upgrading from a DSLR and want to keep your lenses, I still highly recommend it. Just make sure you've got the computer to handle it. This camera gets a 7.5 out of 10. Please subscribe for more film reviews, and if you want to read some more about my experience with this and other equipment we reviewed, please visit us online at equipmentreview.tv.